Hey, and on this week in pharmacy, powerful episode spotlighting the critical leadership roles pharmacists are taking in two vital areas of patient care: pharmacovigilance and hormone replacement therapy and treatment therapies, with Dr. Sara Rogers and Dr. Tiffany Reuter. You're not going to want to miss This Week in Pharmacy. Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, did you know that it's National Adverse Drug Event Awareness Day just passed this week? I think it was on the 24th of March, and how important that is. That's right. This is TWIRx 03-2825. It has been a busy week. Just got back from Nashville from the American Pharmacists Association 2025. That was a Super Bowl event for us. It was amazing. Please be on the lookout for that 3-part series that will be coming out starting, I think, late next week. I want to shout out to pharma staff for being our support, for being an organization that gave us the ability to go to Nashville and spend time with our most favorite providers out there, our pharmacists. And also a shout out to Ural Pharma, who was concentrating on thyroid disease and pain management. And a shout out to Mark Garofoli, the pain guy. He's known as the pain guy. He was there. He's going to be part of the show. It's going to be a great 3-part series. If you didn't get to attend the APHA, it was busy. It was a lot going on. There was inspiration everywhere. That was the theme this year. But back to our theme right now, the National Adverse Drug Event Awareness Day, and how important that is specifically to our pharmacists. Pharmacists, the number one provider out there keeping patients safe. And I have a very special guest, has to be a pharmacist. That's my favorite provider. And I'd like to welcome to TWIRx, Dr. Sara Rogers. Welcome to This Week in Pharmacy.
Hey, Todd, thanks so much for having me. And I have to say, I'm really looking forward to that 3-part series about the APHA meeting.
Absolutely. It was a cornucopia of, I should say, polypharmacy of pharmacists. And it was wonderful. It was so good to be with people, and it was relaxed. And we were on the edge of the entire main booth. So we were on lane 1, and we got a ton of traffic, and lots of pharmacy students wanted to know what we were doing. And what's fun about pharmacy students, Sarah, is I can give them a link to our shows, and they get 40 podcasts they can access and really think, what sector of pharmacy am I interested in? Pediatrics or geriatrics?
Oh, yeah. It's like the supplemental education.
Yeah, exactly.
The PharmD.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Dr. Sara Rogers, PharmD. And before I get into the American Society of Pharmacovigilance, I want to know why you wanted to be a pharmacist.
That is a great question, because I actually had quite a journey before I landed on pharmacy. I came in, I was maybe a business major, economics major. Then I kind of became drawn to the sciences. So I transferred to the School of Natural Sciences, did biology. And as I was still kind of deciding what I was going to do, maybe my junior year, we had a really good family friend that was a pharmacist, and she just absolutely loved her job. She worked in a hospital, and that's when I decided to go to pharmacy school. So I almost feel like it's just these different events kind of guide you one direction. I wasn't anything I had heard of before. I had heard about it from a family friend. So
how did your interest in really dialing into drug awareness and adverse reactions and how that affects the public health and people? And because when I think of pharmacists, that's the number one reason for pharmacists: make sure people aren't dying based on medications that may either not play well with something else that they're on, or maybe they're allergic or something's going on. But this whole pharmacovigilance is so fascinating to me. And we just celebrated, National Adverse Drug Event Awareness Day. So this is a perfect TWIRx to have at the end of a busy week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, kind of going through pharmacy school, as much as it seems intuitive that pharmacists are the ones that should be preventing adverse drug events and often are. There's a few topics that aren't consistently covered in the traditional PharmD curriculum. Pharmacovigilance is one of them from a drug safety perspective. Pharmacogenomics is another thing I didn't learn about in pharmacy school. I think more and more it's getting incorporated, but genetic predisposition to drug response. And when I left pharmacy school and when I worked at MD Anderson, so I was in oncology for a few years, and it was actually a consulting opportunity that I was working on where we're doing this research, and we found out that adverse drug events were a leading cause of death. And that was also something that I didn't really fully realize when I was going through pharmacy school. So it wasn't until I went out into, working that I found out what a tremendous problem this is. And so the person I was working on this project with, his name is Ben Brown. He's also the co-founder for ASP. We kind of just looked around to see what organization was specifically working on addressing the high rate of adverse drug events in the US. And there are different medication safety organizations, for example, Institute of Safe Medicine Practices, ISMP. They're solely focused on preventing medication errors, which is one type of adverse drug event. And so that's when we decided to start ASP, and we've really focused a lot on another component of adverse drug events called adverse drug reactions. So that's side effects from medications that are taken as prescribed at typical doses, so not an overdose, not a mistake. And there's a lot of variation in how people respond to medications, and a lot of that is based on differences in genetics. So that's where a lot of our projects have been around pharmacogenomics and precision medicine over the past several years.
Well, I'm glad you're here to talk about it and kind of drill down into it, because a recent report, according to St. John Fisher University, there's approximately 3.5 million physician visits, 1 million emergency department visits, and 125,000 hospital admissions each year based on adverse drug reactions. So that's major. I mean, that's something that must be paid attention to. And in the first line of defense is that pharmacist that's really dialed in. Talk to me about the event. Talk to me about what we just passed this week and the attention that you're bringing. And then I'm going to have some additional follow-up conversation or questions about the ASP.
Yeah, of course. So in 2021, we had developed a social media campaign called the Fourth Cause Campaign to highlight adverse drug events at the time, which were cited as the fourth leading cause of death. And we're looking for a meaningful day to launch this campaign. And I'll mention also that we did put out a press release on Monday that it's actually now higher than the fourth cause. So it's the third cause of death with all things considered. And we didn't see a national day, and there's a lot of different national days, but there wasn't one that we could find that was focused on adverse drug events. So we put in a proposal to start National Adverse Drug Event Awareness Day. There's a couple of private organizations that name national days. There can't be any other day that focuses on the same topic. It has to follow certain guidelines, and it has to get unanimous approval by a board. So we found out right before the first ADE day in 2021 that it was approved, and that's when we launched the Fourth Cause campaign, which now is being rebranded to Third Cause to highlight the escalation and some of these events that have been happening.
That's exciting that the impact of pharmacists bringing the awareness to this is now it's a national day. When did the national day become officiated?
I want to say it was February 2021. So it gave us about a month and a half to prep for our official launch on March 24th in 2021. So that we just held our fourth annual one, and each year it grows. We have this social media campaign where people can use the hashtag Fourth Cause or Third Cause now to not just healthcare professionals who we encourage to talk about what they do to prevent adverse drug events, but also patients. So we can understand that perspective of individuals and their loved ones potentially who have had serious adverse reactions. And so if anyone were to type in the hashtag fourth cause, you can see some of those stories, and it's can be sometimes very tragic. So it just helps bring national attention to this issue, which I think is becoming more and more at the forefront, as head of Department of Health and Human Services also came out a couple weeks ago and said adverse drug events are the third leading cause of death now, when it was originally the fourth when we launched the campaign.
Wow. So we also want to let your listeners and let our listeners know that there is a conference this fall, October 23rd, 25th. This is last year's conference.
It was a great conference, though, Todd.
I was wondering, I'm hoping that we can talk about a conference upcoming. Do you have another one in October of 2025?
We were thinking of doing it every other year. That was the first one we did. Okay. So that one was a consensus development conference, and and it was at the United States Pharmacopoeia, who are gonna be they're also launching a personalized kind of like a new USP standard for pharmacogenomics. So they're assembling a committee now, and we're going to be working with them to support standards development. But the consensus statements that we developed during the conference are going to be opened to the public for public comment. So, and those will be published in JACCP later this year.
The ASP's objectives on your website, when I think of precision medicine and pharmacogenomics, I always, of course, have conspiracy theories as to why it's not a fully blown usage science. And I hear from a lot of intelligent people who's in pharmacogenomics as to the reason. But once again, my conspiracy theorist mind, and I'm the consumer, so I get to act like that. I don't have to come with evidence base per se. And that is, there's pharma companies out there who would be sued if pharmacogenomics became, 100% go effective. If we said, hey, wait a second, there are 50, 60, 70% of the people that are taking this medication are not able to metabolize as designed, or not able to consume, or are allergic to it or something. So what do you think is some of your, there's probably several roadblocks, but what are some of the roadblocks you're thinking of why PGX isn't like just natural part of testing? Like you would take a strep test, you'd take some other kind of, cheek swab test or something. Like, what is it about PGX that you think that we still have these roadblocks?
It's a great question. And also, I just love that you're asking the question. That's what we really encourage people to do, is ask questions when it comes to your meds. But with regard to challenges with PGX, a couple of things. So, and you mentioned the pharmaceutical aspect of it, and there is some kind of thoughts or hypotheses around, is this intentionally being blocked? But I will say FDA does have guidance to drug companies to do pharmacogenetics testing during trials, but it's optional. It's not enforced, if you will. It's just a recommendation. So that's one piece of it, but it is good. They do recommend collecting the sample. So if anything comes up in post-marketing surveillance, they can go back and see, was there something PGX related? And there are several medications that do have information in the drug label that either recommends or requires testing. We'd like to see more guidance like that of the requiring testing portion of it. And then how that information from the drug label gets translated into clinical practice guidelines is another challenge. So we actually reviewed dozens and dozens of clinical practice guidelines, basically any guideline that has a drug with a known pharmacogenetic association. And there was a lot of, I think, gaps in the guidelines compared with the evidence. And then there was also discrepancies between different guidelines that reference the same medication. So it might be recommended in one guideline for that medication, but the same medication in a different guideline may not mention PGX at all. So those are some of the challenges. And I think with so many guidelines developing groups, and there's some questions around how those decisions are made, which we haven't gotten a lot of clarity on. And then, of course, the reimbursing the cost of testing is another big one. We just looked at a lot of the medical policies for pharmacogenetic testing, and we published that in AJMC as a paper by Jay Patel et al. But we looked at the top 10 payers based on number of covered lives to see if pharmacogenetics was covered, and then what was that evidence used to determine, that recommendation, either covering the testing or not covering the testing. So I will say a lot of payers do actually cover pharmacogenetics testing, just not necessarily that panel preemptive testing like what you described. Why can't everyone just get a swab and we can know, and then that can be used for all of our future prescribing decisions. So I think those are a couple of the key challenges, but honestly, I think the biggest challenges we face with integrating PGX testing at the point of care are challenges, are just really logistical challenges and workflow, and getting that information into the EHR and some of those kind of front lines challenges, which we're also dealing with in the clinic too.
Yes, and letting the public know that the test is available, and if there are medications that they're on that are the top 100, medications that go over a specific percentage of people that are having issues, with whatever metabolization or allergic reaction or something, that they know that the first time I was ever introduced to pharmacogenomics, it wasn't even a pharmacist that introduced it to me. It was an entrepreneur out of Greensburg, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh. His name is Dom Meff, and he since passed away. But when he introduced me to it, he was trying to build an application that would connect to the EHR system that UPMC in Pittsburgh was using, and then quickly help the physician know if it was a candidate for the test based on CPT and ICD-10 codes. If it was candidate to be reimbursed. And then he sold that application to, I think, UPMC Enterprises. But what was interesting about his own experience is he wasn't able to metabolize a blood thinner that he was on, and it caused him issues during one of his surgeries. So he would bring his PGX test. He made a booklet and he had it laminated, and it was like thick, and it had almost every medication that he purposely paid himself. He paid for the lab to do all the testing on all the panels. And he would go to the physician and say, listen, you are not giving me any medications. I'm not getting on the operating room table until you go through this. And that's back in like 2012, 13, 14, when testing was like $2,100 for a panel. Today, it's drastically less expensive, but nonetheless, it's a life savings test. And I just want to see it, come to full usage, and being able to get the consumers to understand that, hey, your DNA is different than your mom's, different than your aunt, different than your friends. And just because this medication is working on them doesn't mean it's necessarily working on you. Make sure that you get tested so that you know that if you are on a bunch of medications that they're working as intended.
I will say that's one of the most fascinating things over the past few years is the response from people when we tell them about pharmacogenetics testing. Actually, I do this talk called Safe Medication Management for Seniors. And there's a big conference that it's not a health or medication related conference, but it's for older adults, and they do yoga and things like that. And they asked me to come in to do my safe med management for seniors talk. And I just gave them some tips using a pill box, things like that. And at the very end, almost as kind of like an on the fly kind of mention, I talked about pharmacogenetics testing. We're doing this conference and medication management service at Texas A&M Health where I work. And we do this type of genetic testing that lets you know more about how you respond to medications. And you would not believe the queue of people just almost all the way to the back of the room asking if they could, participate in that service, which we first launched as a research pilot. They're like, I live in this totally other area of the state, but I'll drive in for that. And, I always thought kind of for Medicare enrollees, they do a Medicare annual wellness visit. And that's when they're supposed to go through your primary care physician goes through and looks at all your meds. And at the time I made a comment to one of the guest attendees about that. And she's like, no, I just had a wellness visit. They didn't look at my meds. So I think that really is a need for pharmacists to have that chance to go in and do that comprehensive medication management review. And then if we can add in the genetics information, that really adds a lot of value to it. So
absolutely. So also this week we had some, in my opinion, it was bad news because I don't like to see companies that are in genetics, falter. But 2020, they filed for bankruptcy. And once again, I don't think that's good for the consumer initiative of understanding how important your genes are and how you're affected by the foods you eat or by the medications that you're taking. But that was a unfortunate thing that happened this week.
I read a little bit about that. I don't know, Todd, if you read more than me, kind of what were the factors at play behind that? I agree with you. I mean, I
think it's part the woman that started it, and she did a full video about how this kind of started happening. It actually started to crumble about 5 years ago with the fact that their business model from the very beginning required their consumer to take the test once and that's it. So there's no reoccurring revenue build up, and they came up with an app that they wanted their patients to stay engaged with, and they tried to change kind of the pricing model. But that was probably the major issue, was the fact that you could take this test one time and have genetic information. And 23andMe stopped doing the health side of things, and they're really concentrating more on the ancestry, but they were trying to help with drug development and data collection. So I don't know all the details of it. I'm going to continue to read on it because I think, once again, that's a fascinating organization. But that's a punch in the eye when it comes to the genetic world. We don't want organizations like 23andMe who have reach to the public. We don't want them failing, because we want genetics to come full circle of what it could really empower pharmacists, physicians, research, drug development. And I just think it's in the best interest of public health to have an organization like 23andMe doing very well instead of filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like kind of a business model oversight. But yeah, I think that's maybe where the business model is that when we use the PGX piece of the genetic testing for med management, there's always going to be changes to people's chronic conditions and what meds they're taking. So it's almost more of something that needs to be consistently monitored. Yep. And it would be nice to have kind of an enduring, if 23andMe even could have had an enduring model like that, where it could continue to provide some health benefit. But I think one of the challenges with 23andMe is that they specifically marketed it for kind of informational purposes or almost for entertainment purposes kind of thing, so that it didn't have to originally go through some of those regulatory pathways that a lot of the PGX tests go through in order to be approved or be able to use clinically at the point of care. So that may be another oversight.
Yeah. There's going to be a day in our lifetime, I know it, that we will have an app on our phones. We will take our phone to the grocery store. We will walk up to a can of tomato sauce. We will scan the tomato sauce. We will look at the app, and we'll see how effective that ingredient is to our biological makeup and our DNA makeup, and then go to an over-counter med, scan the med, by barcode, look at the results. Should I take this? And it'll be colored red yellow, orange, green, and then if it's in the green, I can go get it. If it's orange or red, red or orange or yellow, I should contact my physician or contact my pharmacist. But there's going to be an app someday that's going to allow the consumer to constantly double check, especially if they're on a lot of medications. Is this going to interact? Is this going to interact? Because we have so much data and we have so much capability of involving genetics into foods and of course our medications. But I'll believe I'm a science fiction guy, so I know that that's going to come someday.
I mean, you're giving away all your hot business ideas and like on the podcast episodes. That's why everyone needs to subscribe to the Pharmacy Podcast Network so we can get more hot business ideas like this. But yeah, I think let's do it. We have the team here. Right. You said 45 podcast hosts, so
let's get them all together and we'll pound out the PGX app for the consumer.
I like it, and then including the food relationships too.
Yeah, if you're allergic to something and you took a cheek swab and now you have nutrigenomics intertwining with pharmacogenomics, and that's how I'd want to live. I'd want to know what I should be eating and what I shouldn't be taking and drinking. And everybody that continues to drink some kind of alcohol, they'll be like, I'm just gonna ignore it. It's in the red and I'm just gonna keep buying this or whatever you would have. But at least you could probably tie that to legalities too, and saying, listen, and we know you took the test, we know you have the app, and as a matter of fact, you scanned that Jack Daniels and you kept drinking it. So now that you are suffering with cirrhosis, we're not covering it, and insurances could even get involved.
Yeah, it's almost like an informed consent for just food and drink consumption and over-the-counter medications and other things that are all processed through the same metabolic pathways. So now we're getting into phenoconversion.
I don't even know how to say that, but that's why I have you here. Dr. Sara Rogers, this has been awesome to talk with you. I want to just give a shout out to our listeners. If you want to connect with Dr. Sara Rogers, please go to LinkedIn, search Sara Rogers. It does come right up. Pharmacist, researcher, director of translating genomics into improved patient care. One of my heroes is one of my favorite providers, Sara. So I hope to have you back on This Week in Pharmacy.
Oh, wow. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Always good to chat with you.
This episode is sponsored by Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, widely known as IPC. Established in 1983, IPC is the nation's largest group purchasing organization owned by independent pharmacy. With a mission of maximizing the success of community pharmacists, IPC works to provide members with access to effective programs and services designed to enhance profitability for independent pharmacy. Read more about our mission by checking out our website at ipcrx.com. That's ipcrx.com.
Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, something that just hit the news. Not sure if you've seen this. This is important for our pharmacists out there, especially our consultant pharmacists. And I think of our community pharmacist. I think of our pure consultant pharmacist. But Noom, Noom, I hope I'm saying that right. Noom introduces hormone replacement therapy for menopause care. And it goes into how Noom is going to start really drilling down into support for women experiencing menopause-related healthcare challenges. And this new service aims to address gaps in menopause care, as only 30% of women seeking treatment receive adequate support. Noom goes on to saying that already they've guided 8 million women aged 40 to 60 through its behavioral-based weight management program, and how many of those women have reported difficulties in their health and weight loss due to menopause symptoms. You know, this is important to me because I think of opportunities to bring pharmacists to our programs and to This Week in Pharmacy who really dial into specific issues that we know that your patients out there in community, in geriatrics, in specialty pharmacy are actually experiencing. And with pharmacists being seen 9 times more per year than the physician, it's the reason that this network continues to get powerful and supporting pharmacists out there who love their patients, want to help their patients. I'd like to introduce my special guest, Dr. Tiffany Reuter, to This Week in Pharmacy.
Hi, Todd. Thank you for the introduction.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you saw that, but Noom is really hitting hard with this hormone replacement therapy for women that are experiencing menopause. And you and I have talked about this issue. You advocate for this issue. You have an amazing Facebook following and presence with your consultancy. So what do you think of this? As much as I like to hear about it, I get worried that the patient's going to get lost in the gargantuan movement of somebody like Noom, who's focused on a whole bunch of different disease states, where you really have a vertical that's very special. So share with our listeners what Dr. Reuter is doing in that space.
Sure. So I'm the founder of Better Health and Hormone Balance, LLC, and I work with midlife women one-on-one to help them balance their health and their hormones so they can just live radiantly restored lives. When you get an opportunity, especially as a pharmacist or even in the community setting, you do find that you have a lot of contact with those clients and you get to hear their stories and you get to understand their lifestyle, and you really get to understand the heart of the issues that they're going through. And I think from a pharmacist standpoint, I just recognized there was such a large opportunity to work with women, to really hear their stories, to advocate for them, and then validate what they're experiencing, and then find them the solutions to their issues, right? So that is the journey that I have gone down, is that I love helping women work with their lifestyle, work with those small changes that are going to add up to big results so they can feel their best each and every day. There are a lot of demands, whether it's motherhood or your employee, maybe you have a spouse, maybe you have aging parents. Like, there's a lot of demands that go on throughout the day. And when you're not feeling your best, when you're having not hot flashes or night sweats, if you're not sleeping well at night, if you're irritable or moody, you can't perform your best and you can't live your best life when you feel that way. So I work with these women to help find those solutions so they can reverse those symptoms, so we can really address those root causes of why they're feeling that way. From a community pharmacy standpoint, it's such an excellent way to capture and talk to those women that are coming into your pharmacy. So there's a lot of opportunity because they do have a story to share. They do have a journey that they're going through. And through consultation, you can carve out that time to really sit with them, hear their story, validate their symptoms, and then help them find those solutions. So with a company like Noom, it's fantastic because they're getting that bioidentical hormone replacement therapy that they need. But a pharmacist can really support and advocate for that patient while they're on that therapy, because they're going to have questions, and they're going to need someone that has the knowledge base that pharmacists have to support them through that journey. And I think it's such an excellent opportunity for that pharmacist to really become kind of like the point of a triangle between the patient, the physician, and then you as a pharmacist, that you can be that advocate. You can work with them one-on-one. You have those opportunities to really support them and honestly just make a big impact in their life. Because every woman, if they live long enough, will go through menopause. So this isn't something that's optional for women. We're going to go through it. And so we need someone in our corner that's going to support us. And so that's my whole motto, is I've stepped out from behind the pharmacy counter, and I'm stepping into your corner to help you live radiantly restored.
I love that, Tiffany. And there's so much positivity to it, and there's guidance to it. Our physicians out there, God bless them, are so pounded and overwhelmed with so many patients. And even my own physician, he is wonderful. He's second generation. I was with his father. His father passed away. He took over, which I thought was kind of special. And now he continues to drive quality. But he admits that he doesn't think he gets enough attention with some of his patients who are high touch, who need more attention. And I think this hormone replacement is definitely one of those subjects where you want to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about, who can guide you, who can even make suggestions for supplements along the way, maybe stages of therapy, maybe dosing challenges or adjustments in dosing. So if the football is handed off to the pharmacist in this realm, then the pharmacist and the patient can drive things and then communicate back to the physician how things are going or making some suggestions right out of the gate. What's your suggestion to pharmacists listening, whether they own their own community pharmacy or whether they're a consultant pharmacist like you? What do? We talk with the patient. Let's say we're talking to a woman. She's 58 years old. She's experiencing hot flashes. She's kind of going through the first stages of menopause. We could say to her, hey, reach out to your physician. Let them know that you have a pharmacist in your corner who specializes in hormone replacement therapy. Maybe give them this PDF or give them this form so that they know what we're talking about. How do we kind of reverse the system? Because we know we need a prescription. We know we need physician involvement, but sometimes a physician almost needs guidance to get to the next stage based on the intelligence of a pharmacist. So kind of demystify that for us.
For sure. I mean, it definitely starts with that interaction with the patient and knowing that they are looking for those answers. A lot of pharmacies can even work with collaborative agreements with a physician. So sometimes it may not be the physician directly that you first get in contact with. You might need to talk to maybe an office manager, but I would give them, some of your pharmacy information, who you are, what you do, how you specialize in this area. And then also because like all of us pharmacists, we love evidence-based information, maybe send over a few research, a few studies, and even not just case studies about hormone replacement therapy, but send them over some studies about how having a pharmacist in your practice or working alongside you actually increases patient adherence and patient outcomes. So it's definitely a win-win for the physician when they know that you are stepping into their corner to support them as well. You're not stepping on toes, you're stepping alongside them to help them get the best outcomes for this patient. So just really having that mentality of collaboration, of support, give them the evidence, because everyone likes to have that hard data of how you're going to support this patient. And then you can work from there on what the best next steps are. Sometimes it is just small lifestyle modifications, but sometimes we do need to add in a medication, a bioidentical hormone, just to start alleviating those symptoms, starting to get them a little bit more regulated in the hormone journey. While you, as a pharmacist, with the regular interaction you're going to have with that patient, then you can set up other consultations with that patient to address lifestyle modifications. Maybe it's stress management, maybe it's sleep, maybe they need a supplement, maybe we're looking at some nutritional deficiencies that are really ramping up those hormone issues. So then we can also talk about supplementation. You can work that into your practice as well. Then with all of that, you can send all that as a summary, not only to the patient, but to the physician as well. So now the prescriber knows, okay, this pharmacist is really invested in my patient and they're really going to take care of them. And it builds that trust. And we have so much knowledge. Pharmacists, I think sometimes are unrecognized for how much we know about pharmacology, about biochemistry. And it really gives us a chance to show up and shine and say, hey, I'm going to help you take care of your patient. I'm going to be an advocate for them for the best care. And this is how I'm going to do it.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about the market. The market is hot. So listeners, we just found a news article that was posted just this week. Open PR, Worldwide Public Relations, just put out a story. Aging population and health awareness fuel the HRT market. The hormone replacement therapy market is set to grow at an estimate of 5% from 2025 to 2034, rising from 25 billion to 40 billion by 2034. So what that tells me, Tiffany, is that this is not a space that is shrinking. This is a space that's growing. And if you're a consultant pharmacist and you can have an entire bucket of services that you become an expert in, and if this is one of those services, this is a great sector of women's health that is one of the sectors I think that's on fire based on this data. But what do you think of that? I mean, that for someone like you, that's got to be good news.
It's really great news. It also gives me just a little bit of hesitation, just of how many people are going to start trying to get a piece of the pie that maybe aren't skilled.
Cut and
So
corn.
there is going to Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be the influencers out there that might be having misinformation. Maybe they're not reading those evidence-based research studies that all of us pharmacists like to read. So I think it's an exciting time. I think I'm just so excited we're finally having a conversation that's productive for women's care, that we're giving a voice to the silent that have been silenced for a very long time. And I think as pharmacists, this is such a great time to take a stand and say, I am the knowledge expert in this field. You can trust me, and I am going to work with you and advocate for you, as opposed to, the influencer on social media that's getting all these followers, but their information is misguided and it's misled. And I don't want other women to get misled or misguided. I want them to have all the information so they can make the most informed decision regarding their health. So as a pharmacist, like, this is the time for you to go ahead and find that passion, find that niche. And if it's in hormones, definitely take advantage of it, because this is a great time to really advocate for your patient, make a difference in their lives, and really help build a healthier generation of women and help build a healthier community in your surroundings.
Dr. Tiffany Reuter, you have to promise that you'll come back and we'll maybe do a mashup with another pharmacist who digs into women's health specifically. We have 3 or 4 shows on the network that focus on women's health, so we'll have to get you introduced to Marina Boskov and Daniel Plummer, who really drive specific issues. But bioidentical hormone therapy, hormone replacement therapy, and the guidance of a pharmacist is a win-win-win for people that are out there that are concerned with it, and the guidance that pharmacists will provide is golden. So thank you so much for being on This Week in Pharmacy.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Hey, before we go, how do people reach out to you?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook. I'm Tiffany Reuter. I have an active Facebook. Is where I'm hanging out most of the time. And if you are interested, I have a private Facebook group. It's called Optimize Her. That is where I provide education, support, advocacy. I put in a lot of comments. I'll do Facebook Lives. So that's where you're really get a chance to interact with me. And then you can also just find me on Facebook as Tiffany Reuter. So thank you so much. I'm excited to meet everyone. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and share with you today.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon on This Week in Pharmacy.
Thank you.